I remember the night it all started, the one that rewrote everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and the thin line between love and self-destruction. It was raining, not a soft cinematic drizzle, but that kind of sharp, relentless downpour that soaks through your shoes before you even realize you've stepped outside. I was standing under a flickering streetlight outside the county jail, my phone pressed against my ear, my heart doing that strange thing where it beats and breaks at the same time. "Evelyn, he's your brother," my mother said on the other end of the line. Her voice was tired, the way it gets when hope has been wrung out of someone over years. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the parking lot, the puddles, the asphalt gleaming like a mirror to every bad decision I'd ever made. "He's all we've got," she whispered. "You're all he's got." That's how I convinced myself I was doing the right thing. Back then, I was working as a senior analyst at Graywell Financial, a mid-sized corporate firm in downtown Chicago. I was 31, proud of the life I'd built from scratch. Every morning, I'd walk into that glass tower with my coffee and my pressed blazer, pretending I belonged there. And most days I almost believed it. I was quiet, methodical, the kind of employee bosses liked because I didn't make waves. My supervisor, Daniel Clark, used to tell me I had reliability written all over me. At the time, I thought that was a compliment. Now, I understand, that was code for someone I can use without worrying she'll push back. Daniel was charming, in that polished, insincere way successful men learn to be. He remembered birthdays, asked about your weekend, and made you feel like he actually cared. He didn't. None of them did. But I didn't know that yet. I was too busy trying to prove I was worth keeping. Then came the call, the one that made everything else blur. My younger brother Mark had been arrested. Armed robbery. A convenience store in Aurora. He claimed he didn't do it. And I believed him. I don't know if it was faith or guilt. Maybe both. Because Mark wasn't just my brother. He was the shadow I spent my whole life trying to pull into the light. Our father left when I was 9 and Mark was 5. Mom worked 2 jobs. I was the one who made sure he did his homework, got to bed, didn't burn the house down trying to make toast. He used to say, "You're more of a mom than she is." I used to smile when he said that. I don't anymore. When I walked into that courthouse the next morning, the fluorescent lights hummed above me like a bad omen. Mark sat in the defendant's chair, shackled, wearing an orange jumpsuit that made his eyes look older. He glanced back once, just once, and the look he gave me said everything. Save me. And I did. God help me, I did. I emptied my savings, borrowed from my 401k, and begged Daniel for an advance at work. Told him it was for family medical expenses. He didn't ask questions. Maybe he didn't care enough to. Maybe he liked the idea of me being indebted. I found Mark a decent lawyer, sat through every hearing, showed up for every meeting, and cried when the verdict came back not guilty. He walked out free that afternoon, hugging me like a man reborn. He promised he'd start over. He promised he'd pay me back. He promised he'd stay clean. And I, foolish, desperate for redemption, believed every word. The months that followed felt like the calm after a storm. I started sleeping better. Mark got a job, or at least that's what he told me. He said he was working construction out near Joliet, sending money when he could. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe that everything I'd sacrificed meant something. But the small things started to pile up. Calls that went unanswered, messages left on read, the way he'd show up at my apartment at midnight asking for a little cash because his paycheck got delayed. I told myself he was just getting back on his feet. I told myself this was temporary. I told myself a lot of things that weren't true. Then came Daniel again. One late night in the office, he stopped by my desk, leaned against the partition and said, "You've been distracted lately, Evelyn. You okay?" His tone was warm, but his eyes weren't. They were calculating, like he'd already decided the answer and just wanted to hear how close I'd get to it. I said I was fine, that I was handling some family stuff but it wouldn't affect my work. He smiled, that tight corporate smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Good," he said. "Because I've got an opportunity for you. High stakes, big payoff. You'd be perfect for it." It was a project proposal for a major client. Something that could define my career if it went well. I threw myself into it. Late nights, early mornings, coffee-fueled weekends. It felt like purpose again, like maybe the universe was finally giving something back. But fate doesn't work that way. It waits. And then it takes twice as much as it gave. 2 weeks before the client presentation, I got a call at work. Unknown number. "Is this Ms. Evelyn Moore?" "Yes." This is Detective Ramirez with the Chicago Police Department. We need to speak with you about your brother. Those words, your brother, they've haunted me ever since. Mark had been caught again. This time no misunderstandings, no wrong place, wrong time. He was running a credit card scam using my name, my address, my financial accounts. All the data he could pull from the forms I'd filled out for his last lawyer. He'd stolen my identity. And just like that, everything started unraveling. Graywell suspended me pending internal investigation. The company's system flagged transactions under my name linked to money laundering. I was escorted out of the building. No warnings, no explanations, no chance to defend myself. Just the quiet humiliation of people I'd known for years pretending not to see me. When I got home that night, my apartment felt smaller. Colder. I remember sitting on the floor in the dark, staring at my reflection in the blank TV screen. My phone kept buzzing. Unknown numbers, reporters, debt collectors, who knows. I didn't answer. All I could think was, I saved him. I saved him, and this is how he repaid me. I called him over and over. He didn't pick up. When he finally did, his voice was calm, almost bored. Evie, you're overreacting, he said. It's just temporary. I needed some time to get on my feet. On my name. I whispered. On my life. He hung up. That night, I cried in a way I didn't think adults could, not from sadness but from disbelief. From betrayal so sharp it didn't even feel real yet. The next morning I went to the bank, then the police, then my company's HR office. By the end of the day I'd lost my savings, my job, and my reputation. By the end of the week I'd lost my faith in blood. And that was the moment it hit me. The storm hadn't ended that night outside the jail. It had just been waiting to start again. When people talk about hitting rock bottom, they make it sound like a single moment, like there's a crash, a breaking point, and then you just start climbing. But that's not how it happens. Rock bottom is quieter than that. It's the slow decay of everything solid beneath you, one small collapse at a time. At first I thought I could fix it. That's what I do, I fix things. I made a spreadsheet, of course. Color-coded. One column for accounts frozen, one for creditors, one for letters I needed to write to clear my name. It made me feel like I still had control, like this was just another project at work. But you can't spreadsheet your way out of betrayal. 2 weeks after Graywell let me go, I got an official notice. Termination of employment due to violation of company integrity policy. That phrase, company integrity, it burned. I'd given 6 years to that place. Stayed late. Skipped birthdays. Broke up with the only man I'd ever seriously dated because he said, "You're more married to your job than you'll ever be to anyone." And they still kicked me out like I was disposable. I appealed, of course. Wrote emails, called HR, begged Daniel for a meeting. He finally agreed to see me. In one of those sterile conference rooms with a glass wall that makes you feel like you're in an aquarium. He didn't even look up from his laptop when I walked in. "Evelyn," he said, like the name itself was a formality. "This isn't personal." I laughed. One of those brittle, humorless laughs that escape before you can stop them. Not personal. My entire career just went up in flames because of something I didn't do. Because of someone I tried to save. Daniel finally looked at me then. Not with empathy but calculation. "That may be true. But from a liability standpoint, we can't risk keeping you on." And that was it. My whole life reduced to a liability. I remember stepping out into the parking lot afterward. The air smelled like wet asphalt and burnt coffee. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped my keys twice before getting the car door open. I sat there for a long time, maybe an hour, maybe more, staring at the steering wheel, replaying every decision that led me here. If I hadn't helped Mark, if I just said no, if I'd been colder, harder, smarter. But I wasn't any of those things. I was the kind of fool who still believed family meant something. The weeks that followed blurred together. A carousel of rejection emails, sleepless nights, and ramen noodles. I started selling things. First the fancy coffee machine, then the TV, then the couch. It's funny how quickly comfort becomes clutter when you're desperate for rent money. Mark still hadn't called. Not once. Then one night, early February, there was a knock at my door. It was after midnight, the kind of hour when knocks never mean good news. I opened it and there he was. My brother. Hollow-eyed, jittery, smelling faintly of cheap whiskey and regret. "Evie," he said, voice cracked and too soft. I didn't know where else to go. Something in me broke and healed at the same time. I wanted to scream at him. To throw every unpaid bill and overdraft notice in his face. But instead I let him in. Because that's what I do. I fix things. He crashed on my floor for a few days. Said he was sorting things out. I tried to believe him. I made him coffee in the mornings, cooked dinner at night. I even caught myself humming again once. A melody Mom used to sing when we were little. For a second I thought maybe this was our reset. Maybe this was how we started over. Then one afternoon I came home to find my laptop gone. And with it, every document, every file, every job application I'd been working on. I called him. No answer. Checked my accounts. He'd transferred the last $600 from my checking. And this time I didn't cry. I just sat down on the kitchen floor and stared at the empty space where my laptop used to be. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the room. It was like the world had finally gone silent, like even it was tired of watching me try. That night I wrote a letter. Not to him. To myself. I found it months later, crumpled behind a stack of unpaid bills. It said, "Stop saving people who choose to drown." I wish I'd listened sooner. A few days later I packed a bag and drove to my mother's house in Aurora. She opened the door and just stared at me, her face pale, her hair thinner than I remembered. "You look sick," she said. "I'm fine," I lied. She sighed, that long, familiar sigh that said she didn't believe me but didn't have the strength to argue. We sat at the kitchen table for hours, mostly in silence. The clock ticked too loud. The tea went cold. Finally, she whispered, "You did your best, Evelyn. You always do." And something about that made me angry. Because doing my best had destroyed everything. I stayed with her for a while, sleeping in my childhood room surrounded by the ghosts of who we used to be. The wallpaper still had faint marks from where Mark had drawn superheroes in crayon when he was 6. I used to think that was cute. Now it just felt prophetic, like he'd been drawing masks all along. Mom and I rarely talked about him. When we did, it always ended the same way, her defending him, me walking out. "He's still your brother," she'd say. And I'd think not anymore. But even as I said it, I didn't believe myself. Because somewhere deep down, beneath all the anger and exhaustion, I still wanted to save him. Still wanted to believe the boy I grew up with was buried somewhere inside the man who'd stolen my life. Then came the call. A hospital this time. Mark had overdosed. I remember standing in the sterile hallway, the scent of antiseptic burning my throat. A nurse said he'd been found in an abandoned car outside Joliet. "He's lucky to be alive," she said. Lucky. That word again. It always finds the wrong people. I sat beside his bed, staring at his face, pale, gaunt, unfamiliar. He opened his eyes once, blinked at me and said, "You came." I wanted to say, "Of course I came." But the words caught in my throat. All I could manage was, "You need help." He nodded like a child promising to behave and fell asleep again. He was discharged 2 days later. And just like every other time, he promised to change. I almost believed him. Almost. But when I woke up the next morning, he was gone again, and so was my mother's wedding ring. That was my breaking point. I remember standing in the kitchen staring at the empty jewelry box on the counter, feeling nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just a hollow quiet that settled into my bones. There's a kind of grief that doesn't make you cry. It just empties you out. That was the day I finally stopped running to his rescue. Not because I stopped loving him, but because I finally understood what love without boundaries becomes: self-erasure. The months that followed were hard. Job interviews went nowhere. My credit was ruined. Every time a background check came up, it was like reliving the crime. I started cleaning houses for cash. It was humiliating at first, scrubbing floors in buildings I used to walk into in heels and a blazer. But there was something humbling, almost cleansing about it. No meetings. No manipulation. Just soap, sweat, and silence. One afternoon, I caught my reflection in a bathroom mirror I'd just cleaned. My hair was pulled back, my hands raw from bleach, but my eyes looked different, steadier. That was the first time I realized I was still here. Broken, yes, but not gone. I began walking every morning. Just around the block at first. Then farther. I started journaling again. Small things like how the air smelled after rain or the way the light hit the curtains in the morning. Little proofs of life. It wasn't much, but it was something. It was a start. And then one evening, months later, I got a letter in the mail. Return address: Graywell Financial. My stomach twisted. I almost threw it away. But curiosity won. It was from Daniel. Short, polite, impersonal. He'd heard I was doing better and wanted to extend an opportunity to discuss some consulting work. I stared at that letter for a long time. My fingers trembled. My chest tightened. It was for the first time in a long time. I felt something sharper than grief. It was resolve. I folded the letter neatly, set it on the table and whispered to myself, "All right, Daniel. Let's see how this goes." I didn't reply to Daniel's letter right away. I left it on the table for a week. Sometimes moving it, sometimes flipping it over, sometimes just staring at it like it might change if I waited long enough. It didn't. But I did. I thought about the woman I used to be. The one who believed loyalty was always rewarded, that effort meant safety, that family meant forever. She was gone. In her place stood someone quieter, slower to trust, but sharper. A woman who'd learned how much it costs to hand people the power to ruin you. So when I finally called Daniel, I didn't sound desperate. I sounded professional. Detached. "Daniel," I said. "I got your letter. Let's talk." He seemed surprised, maybe even a little relieved. "Evelyn," he said with that polished tone I remembered too well. "I'm glad you reached out. We met at a cafe downtown, the kind that serves burnt coffee for $8 and calls it artisanal." He looked exactly the same. Perfect suit, perfect hair, perfect lie. I'd aged 10 years in one, but for the first time I didn't care. He explained that Graywell was expanding. They'd lost a few senior analysts, and the firm needed consultants for short-term projects. "Your experience could be valuable," he said. "It's been long enough. I think we can move past the misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. That's what he called the destruction of my career. I smiled. That tight, polite kind of smile people wear when they're tasting something bitter. We talked numbers, scope, deliverables. I took notes. I nodded. I played the part. Because this time I wasn't walking into their world as a pawn. I was walking in as someone who finally understood the game. A month later I was back at Graywell. Not as an employee but as a contracted consultant. Different badge. Different rules. I worked remotely most days, but when I came into the office I could feel the whispers. People who'd once avoided eye contact now said hi in the hallways. Some apologized in vague, half-hearted ways. The kind that meant nothing but sounded good enough to them. Daniel, though, he stayed the same. Polite. Calculated. Careful. He thought I was grateful to be back. He was wrong. I threw myself into the work not for redemption but for information. You learn a lot when people underestimate you. You hear things you're not supposed to. It didn't take long to notice the pattern. Project funds being rerouted, small oversights in client billing, reports that didn't add up. It was Daniel. He'd been skimming. Quietly. Systematically. And suddenly I understood why he'd reached out to me. He didn't want to help me. He wanted to use me again. He needed a scapegoat. But this time I didn't walk blind. This time I took notes. Screenshots. Emails. Copies of financials he thought no one would double-check. Every late-night change he made I documented. Every confidential adjustment I traced. And when I had enough I didn't go to HR. I went straight to the firm's board. I'll never forget that morning. Walking into that marble lobby again, hearing my heels echo against the floor. The same floor I'd once walked across in shame. Felt like déjà vu with a pulse. The receptionist's eyes widened when she saw me. "Ms. Moore," she said. "Tell them I have something they'll want to see." The boardroom was cold. Too bright. The air smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and expensive fear. Daniel sat at the far end of the table. He looked confident. Smug even. Until I opened my folder. It wasn't dramatic, not like in movies. No yelling, no big reveal. Just quiet, undeniable truth printed in black and white. Emails. Spreadsheets. Transfers. Dates. Signatures. Proof that Daniel had been embezzling from Graywell for months. Using internal loopholes I'd once helped design. His face changed gradually, from amusement to confusion to panic. He tried to talk, to twist it, to frame it as a misunderstanding. But the board didn't look at him. They looked at me. The woman they'd once escorted out in disgrace. The woman they'd almost erased. When I left that building later, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt quiet. There's a strange stillness that follows justice. Not joy, not relief, just the absence of a weight you didn't realize you'd been carrying. Daniel resigned a week later. Personal reasons. That's what the press release said. I didn't correct them. They offered me a permanent position again. I declined. because by then I'd started something of my own. Small, quiet. A consulting firm that worked with local nonprofits, small businesses, people who couldn't afford the predators in suits. It didn't pay much at first, but it was mine. And that was enough. As for Mark, he showed up again about a year after everything. Different city. Same story. He said he was trying to get clean. He wanted to talk. I met him in a diner halfway between us, neutral ground. When he walked in, I saw the boy I'd grown up with flicker in his eyes for just a moment. Then it was gone, replaced by the same restless hunger I'd always known. He reached across the table and said, "You look good, Evie. I'm proud of you." It sounded rehearsed, but it still hit something tender. We talked for an hour. Maybe two. He asked for money once. Small, almost casual. I said no. Calmly. Firmly. He didn't argue. We sat there in silence until the waitress refilled our coffee. Then he smiled, that same lopsided grin from when we were kids. "I always knew you'd make it," he said. And for once I didn't try to save him. I just said, "I hope you do too." When I walked out of that diner, the air was cool, the sky turning the color of slate before a storm. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for leaving him behind. Because I finally understood something I'd spent my whole life resisting. You can love someone and still choose yourself. You can forgive without reopening the wound. And sometimes, the only way to heal is to stop going back to the fire that burned you. Now, when people ask me about redemption, I tell them it's not about rising from the ashes. It's about learning how to live with the smell of smoke and still breathe anyway. I still think about Mark sometimes, when I pass a stranger who looks like him or hear a certain song we used to play on road trips. And I still think about Daniel too. How men like him never really disappear, they just find new titles, new victims, new versions of the same game. But none of that defines me anymore. These days my mornings are quieter. I wake up early, make coffee, go for walks before the city fully wakes. Sometimes I catch my reflection in the window and barely recognize the woman staring back. Steadier, softer, still scarred, but somehow freer. And I realize, maybe this is what healing actually looks like. Not forgetting. Not erasing. Just learning to live with what remains, and finding peace in the pieces that survived. Because the truth is, I didn't just save my brother from prison. I saved myself from the one I built around loyalty, guilt, and the illusion that love could fix everything. And that's the kind of freedom no one can steal.